Hello, and welcome to another fully live episode of Hacking with Friends. My name is Kody Kinsey. I'm a security researcher at Varonis, and today we're going to answer your hacking questions. And I'm joined, per usual, by my friend Alex, a fellow hacker. Alex, how are you doing today?
Doing pretty good. A little bit sleepy, but getting there. How about
Nice.
you?
So I'm still recovering from the RSA conference, which was a lot of fun. We got to go to San Francisco last week, and I got to do a presentation on making cybersecurity content. It was really cool. I got to meet some other content creators there, which was super awesome. And yeah, it was overall a pretty great experience. We were kind of masked, not really looking to meet anyone there. I still managed to get a sinus infection, but not COVID, so that's good. And I've just kind of been back and recovering from that. So obviously we're in a new location. So we're in Los Angeles for a couple of weeks. And then who knows what after that.
I
So
also have a nice new set in the background, as you guys can see.
yeah. Yeah. So Alex, what have you been working on this week?
Mostly a lot of hardware stuff. So hopefully we're getting in a new run of nuggets sometime in the next 2 weeks. So I've sort of been keeping up with our overseas production and also making sure that everything is scaling up well. We've also been working on a new revision of the Nugget, just with some feedback we've gotten from you guys, as well as making some slight hardware modifications. So we have the ability to have interoperability with other hardware platforms, like, for example, adding a quick connector so we can interface with other I2C devices, as well as some other useful standards. So that way the Nugget is able to do more stuff. So if you switch over to my screen, you can take a look at what I'm talking about. So this is the latest revision of the Nugget. This is the dev kit version 3.0. So we actually got some of these designs in hand recently, which was just the regular 3.0 design, but we're already on a newer revision here. So you can see there's some updated pixel graphics just because that's cute. But if we switch over to the backside here, you can also see we added the ability to expand the NeoPixel breakout. So this is just a JST-PH connector, which is compatible with NeoPixel strips that you can find on Amazon, NeoPixel strips that Adafruit sells, and also some other carriers. Just a nice little plug-and-play feature for the Nugget, as well as a quick connector, so that way you can interface with various sensors, such as I2C devices for measuring temperature, battery level, stuff like that. So I've been working on this design, also getting that in fabrication, and also doing some other general maintenance on other parts of the Nugget project as well. We've been sort of hands-off with this for a little while now after putting out the rubber Nugget, but I've been getting back into things like working on maintaining some of the libraries, like the Nugget interface library, so that way it's a little bit easier for users and developers to be able to create their own custom software for the Nugget. So you guys can also look out for that sometime soon, which we'll be posting about on our Twitter page.
All right, so we are, of course, fully live, and we will see your questions and comments in the chat. So good to see everyone here. There's also a comment from some Cant, which says, "Sorry, kids, not feeling it." So I guess good morning to everyone but you, sir. As for everyone else, yes, it is a robot cat. And yes, we're back in Cali. So good to see everyone. And we've been off air from last week because we were in a hotel in San Francisco, and it wasn't really a good place to broadcast from. And plus, I was focused on my RSA talk. So if you didn't manage to catch my RSA talk because you didn't want to give the conference like $1,200, then if we go over to my screen, you can see I posted the entire thing on my GitHub. I don't know if they like that or not. I don't really care. So if you didn't catch my talk and you want to see my slides, you can go ahead and go here, and they are all there. Most of it is talking about creating Nullbyte, what the process was like, and then going from 0 subscribers all the way up to like 800,000 subscribers. And getting like 35 million views on content. So really, really cool to go over that with other fellow content creators and people who were curious about how to create content. And overall, a lot of fun. So check those slides out if you're interested in seeing my presentation. We also, Alex actually recorded the presentation as well. So as soon as we end up getting the copy of the audio that they have, we'll be putting something together and putting that up for anybody who wants to see as well. What was the best part of the trip aside from the RSA conference? I would say this dog. This dog had a hoodie and was in an Italian coffee shop that stayed open until like 11 o'clock at night and damaged all the furniture by chomping it. And this was a serial customer that would come in with the dog often, and this dog would chew on furniture and was very cute. and its onesie is adorable. It is a very bad dog.
No one bothered to challenge him. He just sort of went unchecked.
Yeah, and you can also see there's already damage from the dog's teeth on the pillow. So I loved this dog. This dog definitely made my trip.
Oh yeah, there's visible damage to that couch. He actually bit into it.
Yeah.
And scratched it.
Yeah.
And
so aside from that, I've been working on, fun stuff like Dolly Mini. I don't know if you have all gotten in on this, but there is, of course, an AI model that is able to take text prompts and turn them into images. And there have been lots of very interesting ones, as you can see some of the examples in the background. So originally this was developed as a more like full featured thing that was supposed to be rolled out to like select artists, and because it was like too powerful to be given to the general public. And of course, as you can see, the gates have been thrown open to things like this, which was my first creation with Catboy Juggalo as the prompt. You can really go pretty far on this and generate all sorts of interesting things. This was my next one. Leonardo DiCaprio painting a minion nude on the Titanic.
Nice.
Very impressionistic, and it got the essence of what I was asking, which I think is the important thing. So if you haven't tried it out, this is kind of the latest craze. I've seen everybody in InfoSec like playing with this, and there have been some truly spectacularly horrible ones. I haven't gotten many myself that I really like, but I thought that this was a pretty successful one.
If you want to check out a pretty terrible one, I have this one pulled up that I tried to generate. So I gave it the prompt Minion riding a cat. It seemed a little bit confused about that, but I kind of got the idea. Here we have a Catboy Minion, special variety. Here we have cats adjacent to minions. And up here, I think we only have one minion actually riding a cat, but it's pretty interesting. Seems to do the job.
Yeah, it tried. All right, so that's pretty much all we've been up to. Now we're going to go ahead and start taking your questions. So if you have any questions about content we've made, any content you would like to see, or if you just have anything you want to know about hacking, getting into hacking, the RSA conference, or anything else like that, feel free to drop it in the chat and we will start answering those questions. But let's go ahead and take one from one of the videos last week. Alex, do you have a good question?
Yeah, let me pull that up.
All right.
I can actually, okay, here we go. This one's on how hackers use DNS spoofing to phish passwords, which is a video I did showing how you can use the Wi-Fi pineapple, specifically using the Pine AP man-in-the-middle module in order to use DNS cache poisoning to redirect users to malicious websites. So this one's just a generic question. Someone asks, can Hack5 make one tutorial about hardening operating systems, please? I mean, yeah, we can do that. In the past, we have covered different like security oriented operating systems. I think most of you guys covered that on like the security forward channel, but hardening operating systems, network defense and stuff like that, or at least I haven't necessarily covered in video format. So that is something we could look into. If you guys have any specific recommendations or software or something like that that you would like to see covered, I'll be able to do that. But yeah, we could take that suggestion.
All right, so somebody in the chat was asking where we've showed off the Wi-Fi nugget. This is a project that you have designed the hardware of, and we've kind of co-designed the software of. It's a really awesome project, but how do you actually go ahead and flash this? Well, all right, so if you go over to my screen, you just need to go to docs.hack5.org to find all the current documentation. You can see under HackCat, there's Rubber Nugget. Although this might be changing to USB Nugget pretty soon. Let us know what you think. And then here it has all the instructions. So updating your Rubber Nugget via the Chrome browser, that's probably what you want to do. You'll get the Google Chrome browser. You'll get the latest firmware, and then which is also linked to here on the release page right there. So to answer your question, it's right here. This is where you need to get it. And then there's also a page where you can flash it. So if you go here, it will allow you, if you're using Chrome, which I am not in this example, but if you're using Chrome, it will allow you to flash the firmware directly over the web interface, which is so cool because you used to have to use like a terminal or something to do this, and it wasn't very friendly. But now it is all done through the web browser, although unfortunately that browser for now has to be Chrome. So really good question, and that's how you do it.
Yeah. One distinction that I do want to make, some of our customer base was a little confused about like the distinction of Wi-Fi nugget, USB nugget, nugget, rubber nugget, and all that. And also the question we got was in regards to the Wi-Fi nugget. So I just wanted to make it clear, the Wi-Fi nugget is the version of the nugget that we have that was also previously known as the D1 nugget. That one is only for running Wi-Fi based attacks. You can do network reconnaissance, Wi-Fi attacks, stuff like that on it. If you purchased a nugget from the Hack5 store, that's probably known by some other name like the S2 nugget, but we're currently referencing it as the rubber nugget in the documentation. A little bit confusing. We're referring to that one as the USB nugget since that does USB-based attacks. So if you're looking to flash that specific version of the nugget, then you can reference the exact documentation that Kody was pointing you to. As for the D1 nugget / Wi-Fi nugget, you can also flash it there as well. But we were getting some inquiries about like running Wi-Fi attacks on the S2 nugget and stuff like that in our inbox, and some users seem to be a little confused about that.
Someone said they just noticed the tattoo on my arm. Yeah, it's actually 2 of them that come together. I am a big hit at the crypto privacy village. I'll say that. And aside from that, nobody knows what this tattoo is, and they just assume that it is like horoscope symbols, but it's not. So yeah, it's actually a cipher that I designed myself and try to solve it. Good luck.
Nice. Someone says, is the nugget and the pineapple the same? No, it's not.
Hello, Kody K. Hello. Nice to see you. That one was easy. All right. Do we have another question from the videos?
Yeah, this one's directed to you. Hi, bro. How can I get website OTP using Burp Suite? One-time password.
Yeah. Okay. So you're trying to get a one-time password from a website. So like generally you would be using like, I would use OWASP Zap, but Burp Suite works just fine as well. You would be using that to poke around and see what happens in a normal transaction and determine like in what way it's generated or like where exactly it's transported. So, I mean, if you're in like a technical engagement and you're trying to figure out how to capture this, then, you know, you could just like proxy, you know, be able to proxy the user's information and grab it. But I'm assuming you mean like figure out how it's generated or otherwise like extract one from a website. It's kind of situational because it depends on how exactly, you know, it's created from the website and how you would be using it. But there's some really good tutorials that are by Portswigger that go into some of the things that you're talking about. Maybe not this exact scenario, but a lot of scenarios pretty close to it. And that would give you a more specific answer if you want to check out some of the labs by Portswigger, where some of the assignments are very close to needing to grab a one-time password. In fact, there's actually 2 or 3 that are revolving around like a one-time password or a confirmation. So I would say check out those labs for like situational answers that'll show you exactly how you can get a one-time password for a website that's vulnerable and has some sort of like process to generate them that you can intercept, for example. That would be my advice, because otherwise it's going to be pretty situational. Have any thoughts?
Nope, I haven't poked around into that stuff as much as you have.
All right.
Craig says, do you have any repositories for the Bash Bunny you recommend? Honestly, just the de facto Hack5 Bash Bunny payload repository. I also know on their website, Hack5 recently implemented a whole subsection, I think it's just payloads.hack5.org, where you can basically just scrape through and find all of the latest and also awarded payloads that users are publishing. The other week, I covered the pseudo phishing payload, which was pretty interesting. That's by TWD on GitHub. That one was a pretty cool payload. I also know that they have some other pretty good ones out there, some phishing ones, some file exfiltration, stuff like that. But take a look at that repository.
All right, a question in the chat is asking, how do I access devices using low energy Bluetooth without the user's knowledge? Well, okay, so there's a couple of apps on Android by Nordic Semiconductor, and they allow you to scan, connect to, and do some very limited low-level things with Bluetooth Low Energy, like get information about a phone, get its battery level, get like some current information about what's going on with it. There's not honestly a ton you can do, but you can do things like initiate pairing. And often these require like a second factor, like pressing a button on a remote control or a button physically on the device in order to complete that pairing. So altogether, it's not always the most useful thing to do, but I did find that there's a number of different applications that allow you to access this, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, we've talked about a few of those before. I forget what the app is called, but I've used like this like Bluetooth emulating application. I've actually used it in order to trigger like Bash Bunny payloads. And interesting thing you can do is geofencing. So like if a certain user comes in proximity of a Bash Bunny or like leaves the premises, you're able to detect that over Bluetooth and cause that to trigger an event. But you can also manually do that by just like setting it to look for a specific, like, I don't know if it's called a MAC address, but like a Bluetooth MAC address, and have it trigger something. So like you can set that up on your phone if you want to set that up as an event to be triggered.
So somebody else asked, will Hack5 ever do a segment using the Flipper Zero? Yes, somebody sent us a Flipper Zero. So I've reached out And I would absolutely love to get one. And I requested a demo one a while ago, but I know that customers are going to get them first, and I will sign up to buy one as soon as the wait time isn't several months.
Yeah, if we could get our hands on one, that would be nice.
Yeah, but I'm definitely interested. I see people doing some really interesting stuff with it, like especially, you know, like opening like Tesla, like gas caps and stuff like that. Really, or I guess charging ports they're called now. Yeah, like all interesting and cool relay attacks. But yeah, so far I haven't gotten around to playing with them, but I really want to, and I'm looking forward to getting my hands on one eventually.
Sanchez asks, why do people learn assembly and how is it used today? I don't see a lot of people necessarily setting out to like learn assembly as a primary like language to do stuff that much, unless you're doing like very low level electronics. I know like for embedded microcontrollers, things that are like kind of archaic, like 8-bit microcontrollers like Atmel and stuff like that. There are people that are still programming those in assembly. And for some time, I was also learning how to do assembly on some other microcontrollers like the Zilog Z80. Usually that's more popular with just low-level electronics and stuff like that. But there's so many different like APIs and libraries and higher-level plugins that sit on top of that. So it's not necessarily useful for most developers to have to learn assembly nowadays.
So let's see. Somebody offered to, well, Adam offered to trade his Flipper Zero for our prototype Nugget. We only have one. We wouldn't be able to make any more. I mean, I guess that's what makes it so precious. But then he says, JK. That was very mean. I got really excited. I would have traded our prototype Nugget. We could just get another. So somebody else, Mac asks, talk about why Apple's not able to fix zero-click vulnerabilities. So this is really interesting because it actually has to do with the economy around vulnerabilities and what happens when a researcher finds a really juicy one. Often, if they're able to develop a proof of concept and demonstrate that it works, they can turn around and sell that vulnerability to a company like NSO Group or someone like them. And it gets turned into a weaponized exploit that's then used to do all sorts of bad things for extremely high-paying customers. Now, this is a difficult environment to operate under because if you are a legitimate researcher and you find a vulnerability like this, you're kind of incentivized, at least by money, to turn it into somebody who's going to make a profit off of it. And Apple is probably not going to give you a huge bug bounty all the time for every bug you find that might be a zero-click where they don't know how severe it is, or it could be leveraged with another one in order to do something really bad. So, there's a lot of disincentives for people to do the right thing when it comes to finding a vulnerability and turning it in and making sure the vendor gets to fix it. So because a lot of people are money driven, there's kind of an industry that is making it harder for people to make the right decision, I guess, and also pay their bills.
Craig says, any specific packages for a VPS, virtual private server, best for running Hashcat? Thank you.
Don't talk about Google.
Damn it. All right, well, we'll have to circle back around to that.
I knew you were going to talk about Google. Yeah.
If you could also give us more specifics on what you mean by that, what sort of packages or.
Oh no, they want to rip with the Hashcat.
Oh, like plugins. Not sure about that.
Plugins?
Yeah.
No, I think they just want to set up a VPS that's optimized for running Hashcat.
Oh, honestly, just like a general Linux configuration, something that has good GPU power. I'm not going to recommend Google Colab. I know nothing about that. But yeah, honestly, just something with a good GPU.
All right. Let's take
yeah, a little further up, he says, VPS with a GPU? Yeah.
Okay, so Tracy says, my husband just passed away and I need to get into his phone to contact a bunch of his friends. How can I figure out the pattern to unlock his phone? It is an Android. So we never are able to validate things like this because we are not an investigative unit.
And crime is illegal.
And crime is illegal. So like often people will be like, hey, there's some sort of emergency and like we need to, get into this phone. And like we cannot tell the difference between someone who legitimately has had something terrible happen to them and is stuck and is frustrated with the technology and somebody who like thinks their partner is cheating on them. So because to us, it is indistinguishable and it is in fact a crime to break into it in the latter case, we really cannot help with individual instances of you being locked out of a phone. We can explain what the procedure would be, which would be like go to law enforcement, show that like this person has passed away and that you have some sort of need to access it. And then at least it wouldn't be illegal to like attempt to get into it from that point forward. But from a technical perspective, like Android is pretty good with locking your phones down, especially if it's secured by something. So I wouldn't know where to start on that, honestly. So yeah, no, it's going to be hard, and that's not my specialty. So unfortunately, even if I wanted to help, I don't think that I could be very helpful on this one.
I don't have much of a lead either on embedded or like cell phones or stuff like that.
All right.
I get a question, please. Which is the best range I can get for Wi-Fi hacking on both 2, which is 2.4 gigahertz, and 5 gigahertz? And which gear? So typically that would come down to the type of antenna you're using, not necessarily the Wi-Fi dongle or Wi-Fi chip or anything. We have some recommendations for general purpose Wi-Fi dongles that we like. Personally, I prefer the Panda dongles. Those are pretty cheap. You can find them on Amazon for a reasonable price. They're low profile, they're small and everything. One of my go-tos is the Panda PAU09. It has 2 different SMA jacks for 2.4 gigahertz, 5 gigahertz. You can slap on whatever antenna. Personally, my favorite antenna is just this big long boy omnidirectional antenna, which I find just generally useful for whatever wireless landscape I'm in. I know if you're trying to do like long range stuff, Kody has more experience with like Cantennas and some other crazy configurations that are for highly directional applications that have like ranges up to a couple miles. Do you have any recommendations for those?
For if you're just looking for like longest range, the parabolic grid antenna is like always going to be the best. The simple Wi-Fi canned like Yagi Cantennas are like also excellent. Those are my 2 standbys for anything long range.
Yeah, those are sweet.
So somebody asked, how many 7-figure pen testers have you encountered? As far as I know, probably like 4 or 5. Like, and I mostly make that assumption by the companies they work for and how relaxed they seem all the time. But yeah, like a mix of people, like some men, some women, and probably like 4 of them. But yeah, I also don't talk to a lot of like pen testers. Like I know some, but like they're not my primary like group of people. I work with a lot more researchers who are doing like proof of concepts and not necessarily like knocking on doors every day.
There are some people that are doing not something necessarily to the scale of like pen testing, but there are people who do like bug bounty for a living and also stuff like that do make a pretty good salary. I don't think like 7 figures though, but probably 6, I think.
All right, question. What made you get into hacking and at what age? For me, it was when I was like 24 or so, and it was because I needed Wi-Fi to apply for a job.
I think for me, probably around, gosh, how old is an 8th grader? I wouldn't know, like 14 or so. I just wanted to load like Super Mario onto my TI-84 calculator in math class. And then I found out you could actually hack and program the calculator to do like a whole bunch of cool stuff. So from there, I taught myself like programming, hardware hacking, and other stuff like that, just to escape boredom. Mac asks, how many programming languages are required for us to become satisfied in cybersecurity? It's not necessarily about how many different programming languages you're well versed in. And that's not even necessarily a requirement for cybersecurity. I think you can honestly get by with just like a general knowledge of like how programming works. Like if anything, being able to like read code, understand what it's doing functionally. In the event you're doing something like reversing malware or something like that. I will say that programming does help in the process of like automating stuff. You can honestly get by using tools that are already prepackaged and out there. For doing a lot of things, you don't really need to know how to use a programming language or how to construct your own, but I think it does offer value to learn. Even a basic scripting language like Python, I would say Bash scripting is also very useful for stringing together various Bash tools. And understanding at least one compiled or high-level like object-oriented language, something like C++ or Java or something like that, can be useful, but you don't really have to be an expert.
So someone says, you two are awesome communicators. Do you have any tips on how I can improve my communication skills? Yeah, so one of the hardest things to do is explaining technical concepts to beginners. It is really, really hard. So practicing teaching other people what you already know, or practicing explaining like difficult to understand concepts for regular people to understand, like, and kind of giving back to the community by doing that is a really, really good way to practice your communication skills and make sure that you can, get points across to other people without the experience being too frustrating for everyone. Honestly, that's how I got pretty good at this, is just making tutorials, writing them, and learning about what kinds of things people know implicitly and what kinds of things you have to lay out and explain to them. There's a lot of assumptions that are wrong about what other people know that make it really hard to communicate with them. So understanding what types of things you can assume that everybody knows and what kinds of things you really need to have like low level, like generic explanation for, high level generic explanation for, are, yeah, like the key steps to being able to communicate some of these really technical things a lot better. Alex, what would you say?
I think a concrete way that you can start doing that or like practicing that is honestly just start like taking notes for yourself. So like if you're starting out on like a project or you're like trying to fix something that's screwed up in like your Linux environment or stuff like that, and you're like doing all this research on like how to fix it. I find something that was very helpful for me starting out was just like taking notes and writing documentation on how I solved a problem and also how I learned to understand like certain concepts. Basically, if you can make it into like a method, or like if you're able to break it down into like a formula or simple steps to follow, and if you actually understand what's going on under the hood, it's a lot easier to break down to beginners and also just to explain to anybody. So yeah, one thing I do generally suggest for most people in like the tech space is, as weird as it sounds, like having your own like personal blog or like taking notes or writing your own documentation is something that is very useful, not only for being discovered and like having your content out there, but also to be able to elucidate and explain things clearly.
All right, so one question is, what's the procedure for reporting a 0-day vulnerability? Should you report it and ask for money from the company you're for your finding, or just upload a CVE and inform the company? Alex, what do you think?
Trying to find the question because I was distracted by another one.
Oh, so it's what's the right way to turn in a 0-day?
Oh, generally some companies, if they don't have like a bug bounty thing set up, they can be kind of wary of that, and they might be kind of turned off by you like presenting this vulnerability in their system to them. I don't really know how to deal with that, but you should approach it in the best light as possible. Don't tell them that you were like poking around at sketchy stuff. I'm not sure what to do if they don't have a bug bounty program, but do you have any suggestions?
Yeah, so this is where a lot of different security researchers get caught up and have companies end up thinking that they are asking for blackmail. So to a non-technical person, having a hacker tell you that there's a serious problem and that like they want money in order not to even fix it, just to like, for telling you, is not something that's welcome, because the problem wasn't hurting you before, at least like you didn't know it was. And like spending the money now is like you never agreed to that. So frequently, if a company does not have a bug bounty program and you just hit them up asking for money, they're going to think that you're extorting them. And there's also the concept of beg bounties, which is where, and my company gets this all the time, where they'll get an email that says like, I found a serious vulnerability on your website. I need to talk to someone, but before we talk about it, I need to get paid. And then after you pay them, they're like, you have like a JavaScript problem or whatever. And it's like something very generic that doesn't actually harm anything. And it's like not actually a big deal. So these are scams that like really wear down business owners and make them pretty wary of anybody who's offering this sort of service. So I would say it's really a sensitive thing to have a bug that you're trying to turn in for money. And it's good to engage the services of somebody like BugCrowd or HackerOne in order to mediate that conversation for you if it is not somebody that has an established bug bounty program. And even if they do, you need to make sure that you stayed within the bounds of that bug bounty program if you want to get paid. And that might mean that certain things are out of scope. Now, of course, in the real world, nothing is really out of scope. But if you're participating in a bug bounty program, they could say, like, don't do this, don't do that, like, because they're worried it's going to disrupt their services, or they're not looking to pay for that sort of thing. So because of that, just because you found a vulnerability doesn't mean that the company is going to pay for it. They don't have to. There's no real reason for them to, unless they've entered into a bug bounty like contract, they have something set up, and you abided by the terms of that. People get turned down for vulnerabilities through bug bounty programs all the time if they strayed outside of what they were supposed to be engaging, or sometimes just for weird random like reasons that nobody foresaw.
Sometimes they don't even acknowledge the vulnerabilities. Like sometimes they just get like a whole flood of them and they just get swept under the rug. I think we saw that with I forget the exact companies, but I know like there were some critical vulnerabilities reported to like Apple and stuff like that, and researchers were quite frustrated that not only were they didn't respond to that, but the vulnerabilities weren't even addressed for quite some time.
Yeah. So be really careful about this. And again, if you need help doing a disclosure, then going through a company that professionally does bounties like Hackeroni or BugCrowd are a good way to go.
Yeah.
Some people complain about working with them because sometimes they act in a way that kind of like hushes up this vulnerability, and like, it tries to give companies like a really long time to fix them, sometimes beyond what would even be considered reasonable. But yeah, like they're still better than getting sued or getting in trouble for somebody thinking that you're trying to extort them for money. And that's a very real danger when you find a vulnerability and you don't turn it in the right way.
Merrick says, is there any protection for the future when quantum computers will be created? Will passwords make any sense? Yeah, we're starting to see this thing where I guess companies are shifting away from like the whole thing of like using passwords, like going passwordless is like one of the newest big things. Like, of course, there's like 2FA, multi-factor authentication, stuff like that. That's trying to sort of like make this an outdated thing. I guess there's also some measures that are being taken to like implement cryptography that's like resistant to quantum computers or whatever. But I think we're kind of shifting away from like the password protected paradigm.
You splash water on it. And by the way, is my answer.
That too.
Like if you want.
Oh, did you see the thing about that?
Take down a quantum computer. It has to get like super cold. So if it gets too hot, it won't work anymore. So that's my answer.
Did you see that creepy story about the AI at Google?
Yeah, the guy who was put on leave because he like the computer was like, I am sentient, and he's like, holy shit. Yeah, no.
Yeah.
I'm not that worried about that one.
Yeah, that thing can't withstand a garden hose.
This is true.
Craig says, didn't CISA just do a ruling on this for white hats in regards to like the bug bounties and also like Good Samaritan type laws around cybersecurity?
It is less hard to be prosecuted now for it, but that's not going to get you paid, and it's not going to get you somebody not like civilly suing you or otherwise alleging that you caused some sort of damage, distress, or whatever else. So like, yeah, I mean, like if you in good faith turn something in and they freak out and, like they don't like it or whatever, and they try to accuse you of something, it should theoretically shield you, provided you weren't doing anything illegal from, getting prosecuted. But again, let's say that you notice that on your doctor's internet or something, when you're sitting in the waiting room, that there's something that's using default credentials. And when you log in with those default credentials, which you can probably look up or guess, you see something you're not supposed to see. Okay, great. But you did log into a protected computer, which is technically a crime, and you didn't have permission to do that. So if you were turning this in, you're basically admitting that you did something that you weren't supposed to do. And while it's nice of you to do that, and there are now some legal protections, if you cross the line too much and you're doing things that are just like blatantly illegal, then there are still ways you can get in trouble. So it's designed to prevent people from being like frivolously prosecuted. And it's definitely a big step forward, but it is by no means like a shield against everything. And disclosure is still a tricky process. It always has been. I would still encourage people to go through a larger company if they're feeling unsure about it and they found something that they want to disclose.
Adam asks, what do you guys ever of a Bluetooth nugget? Yes, we've come up with the idea of a Bluetooth nugget.
We made one. And I didn't like it.
Was it with the FAT module? Right?
No.
Oh, the
ESP32 C3. Yeah, so we made a nugget based off the ESP32 C3. It does have Bluetooth. However, it doesn't work so good with CircuitPython, and like I really didn't like it. It doesn't have Wi-Fi, right?
I just looked up the specs because honestly, I used that thing like once, and then I just sort of like
pushed it away
because I didn't like it.
Yeah, so it doesn't have Wi-Fi.
No, it does have Wi-Fi though. It doesn't have native USB, however, which is one of the trade-offs and why we decided against using the C3. It's more of like a drop-in replacement.
Are you sure it has Wi-Fi?
Yeah, ESP32 C3. Wi-Fi and Bluetooth.
Wasn't it C2?
Their naming convention is so confusing. I honestly don't know.
It's C2.
No, that's the S.
All right.
We're confused.
All right, I'm pretty sure that it doesn't have Bluetooth. Or sorry, it doesn't have Wi-Fi. But yeah, so this microcontroller just had so many trade-offs, and like the Bluetooth doesn't really work that well. And frankly, like there aren't a lot of like low-level interesting things I'm aware of you can do with a microcontroller on Bluetooth that are super interesting, frankly. So that's why we kind of steered away from making a Bluetooth nugget so far. But if you have some of your favorite Bluetooth attacks you want to share with us, maybe we could look to implement them in the future.
One of the things I have wanted to try is like Bluetooth mesh. I know that's like one application. I don't know what we would use it for, but actually one of the prototypes we were talking about was like creating a DEF CON game for the Wi-Fi nugget. So we were actually thinking of creating like, if you guys have a Wi-Fi nugget, you already know there's like expansion pins on the back of it. So we were thinking of creating sort of like a plug-in hat that you could mount the nugget to that has like a little light up border, and there's like a reactive game you could play over Wi-Fi and where you have to like hack other nuggets and stuff like that. And talking about like the different protocols that we could implement, we were thinking of doing this via just like standard Wi-Fi like access points and stations and having them like communicate that way, albeit there's trade-off for like latency and speed and stuff like that. Mesh networking was one of the things that we wanted to look at implementing. I could see a use case for that maybe with Bluetooth, since that's designed to be a little more resilient for that kind of thing, but just throwing ideas out there. If you guys have any nugget Bluetooth projects, mesh networking, anything like that that you want to see, let us know.
All right. So someone was also saying if something is using default credentials and no authentication whatsoever, then the whole unauthorized clause would be moot since there was no reasonable attempt to secure it. That's correct. So if you see an open Wi-Fi network and you join it, and then in that open Wi-Fi network, you see like a login portal, and it just breezes you right through without having to enter any credentials. It just goes right through. And then look, you're in the administrator setting, or maybe there's no login portal at all. It just takes you straight to the admin role. That's a real thing. That happens sometimes. Like that is completely fine. The computer did not have a password. At no point did you enter a password. You didn't spoof credentials, brute force credentials, guess credentials. You literally just joined an open Wi-Fi network, scanned the network, and then discovered something that was not authenticated. So that would be an example where if you were to go and tell them, hey, like I joined this open Wi-Fi network, I can see on the street, it gave me access to your 3D printers. That actually happened one time. And I realized I could print things arbitrarily, break the printers, do bad things to them, change the warning message. That is completely fine. And that's a real vulnerability that I went and had to walk into a 3D printing shop and tell them that anybody walking by connecting to their guest network was able to control their printers. And they didn't like it, but I hadn't done anything illegal. So there's not really anything they can do about that.
Question from Nand0. What is the impact you want to leave on the world when it comes to cybersecurity?
I would say for me, making sure that people can see themselves in some sort of hacking or cybersecurity job, no matter who they are or what role they're in currently, would be a really good thing. Like seeing a path from where you are now to some sort of job in cybersecurity and feeling like you could be really good at that and enjoy it is what I would like to do.
I was more or less going to give the same answer. I sort of started from that standpoint where it's like, as a complete beginner to everything, like hardware hacking and like electronics, cybersecurity and like all that stuff that I was interested in, I just didn't like have a foothold or like necessarily a place to start. There was like no formal way within like going to like high school or like anything like that that I could like want to learn all these like really cool hacking stuff that I see like all these other people doing out there. So like when I started out, I initially like created like a blog, a YouTube channel and stuff like that to like document like my learning process. And that's also kind of been a goal for me, just being able to like document how I'm learning all these things and also communicate to other people through media and also through all the outreach stuff, like community events and workshops and things that we're doing. That it's not as hard as it seems for beginners to get into this space, and that it's also pretty welcoming.
So there was a comment that was also saying, in my previous example, if you use default credentials to log into something, that is actually, you would get in trouble for that. That's actually true. So using default credentials is still logging in. There needs to be no authentication whatsoever in order for it to be legal. So just wanted to clarify because I don't want to give anyone bad legal advice. Actually, I don't want to give any legal advice. None of that was legal advice. I'm not an expert.
We're not lawyers.
Yeah, we're not lawyers.
We break computers.
Somebody else asks, can the Bash Bunny do remote control? Alex, can it?
What kind of remote control? Yes, probably. We were talking about setting up a trigger mechanism where you could use like a Wi-Fi nugget or something like that to control certain Hack 5 devices. Like for example, the OMG cable, which has built-in Wi-Fi, we were talking about creating like a remote trigger using Wi-Fi on like the Wi-Fi nugget to remotely deploy something. The Bash Bunny is one that I've thought of before, of course, since that's a Bluetooth device. Remote control would probably entail like a Bluetooth connection. You could probably use a microcontroller like the C3 or some other Bluetooth enabled thing. Earlier, we were just talking about, what was it? Geofencing on the Wi-Fi, not the Wi-Fi nugget, geofencing on the Bash Bunny, which is basically the detection of certain devices that are within range or as they're going out of range, and using that detection in order to trigger a keystroke injection payload or something else like that. So yeah, you can essentially have that as a type of remote control, or you could also have your own like control device, like maybe a cell phone that you can like use to toggle on and off a BLE address that triggers a payload.
Yeah. Also, the new Bash Bunny has a Bluetooth trigger, right? So it can be so you can run stuff remotely.
Yeah, that's what I was just talking about.
Cool. Yeah. So officially built into the Bash Bunny, there should be a way to trigger via Bluetooth, which I think is like the most straightforward way to do it. So yeah. What if I tripped and accidentally got into someone's router and changed their Wi-Fi password? All right, so what parts of this are legal? You trip, that's fine. You accidentally connect to an open Wi-Fi network and then go to the admin page, which has no password on it. So now you're in that person's settings. So far, this is all legal. From that page, you could probably see like other credentials and stuff. But if you were to take those credentials and log into something, then that would be a problem. But if you were to change those credentials, like change the name of the Wi-Fi network, then would that be a crime? Well, it depends. Technically, all of that person's devices that were programmed to connect to the old network would suddenly be kicked offline. They are paying for that service. They're paying for the ability to connect to the internet. So technically, you are denying access to the service. It's a denial of service attack, a stupid one. And of course, they should be able to go back and set their things up again to connect to this new Wi-Fi network. But still, it would technically be considered a denial of service attack to change someone's Wi-Fi network. So that would be the point at which you would get in trouble. Excellent question.
Adam says, Wireshark nugget. We have seen proof of concepts using the expressive microcontrollers, just feeding a stream of Wi-Fi packets directly over a serial connection into Wireshark. I think Spacetune actually has a demonstration on how to do that. So in theory, it's possible. Since we've been working more with the ESP32S2 microcontroller, that distinction probably doesn't matter to some of you guys, but that's the microcontroller that's inside of the rubber nugget. We're looking at more ways that we can do Wi-Fi stuff on that chip, although there's not a lot of research into that space. But that'd be pretty interesting. There's a lot more support for like full packet sniffing. I don't think that S2 truncates packets in the same way that the D1 does. So in theory, you can do stuff like handshake capture and other things that would make it more useful as a Wi-Fi sniffing tool.
Mm-hmm. All right, there's a persistent question. Kody and Alex, can SSL certificates be replaced on typical LAN man-in-the-middle attack to seem like trusted SSL certificate? I have no idea. I've never done that. I wish I could answer you, but I unfortunately do not know.
Yep. One of the things I was looking at, though, there's a cool plugin for the Wi-Fi Pineapple for SSL stripping. So maybe I'll cover that in a future episode, and we'll look into that.
Best Linux distro to use for programming. I find myself using Ubuntu a lot, honestly, just because it's easy to throw up. The installation's super easy. It's easy to keep updated. So for programming, if I'm not doing hacking stuff, I'll often do my like easy stuff in Ubuntu. Yeah, that's frankly the one I use a lot.
Same here. That's the operating system I'm currently running. It's just a lot easier. There's like more package support. Dependencies are easy to find. It's not a pain in the ass.
What do I need to buy to remotely launch programs and download programs? Wi-Fi, or no, a USB nugget, I guess, right? Like if that you could do keystrokes and download programs, I guess. Not really sure how to answer that one. All right, so we are starting to run out of time. So if you have a question you really want answered, make sure to drop it in the chat now. And let's go ahead and answer a couple last ones before we sign off for today.
Yeah, Jacob says, working on my first home lab, would you recommend any specific IPS? I know there's some good open source ones like Snort, which is both useful for intrusion detection and also prevention. What's that one that Michael really likes? I forget.
Oh.
Well, that's the only one that I know of. That's a popular open source one, but don't have really any other suggestions besides that.
Kismet is a good
Kismet's
one for Wi-Fi. So like Kismet is able to do things like PF, since I knew he would.
Oh yeah, that.
Yeah, so like if you're looking for like Wi-Fi attacks, pineapple style attacks, that sort of thing, then Kismet is a good alternative.
I was just thinking, oh yeah, we actually went to their booth. I was thinking of Thinkst. They do have some interesting solutions for that. I know there's also like an open source operating system or something like that that runs on a Raspberry Pi that you can use as an IDS/IPS. Don't know the exact project name, but it uses a Thinkst solution, who also makes the Canary tokens, which we've covered on this channel before.
All right, so we have a comment. I don't think it's good that you can't answer questions, ... Well, I personally don't like that you don't know how to use an ellipsis. But aside from that, we are not experts on absolutely everything. We have a specific couple of things that we focus on. And if we don't know the answer to a question, then often we'll either know who does, or we'll just know that it's outside our depth. So I'm not going to lie to people and make up something for something I don't know, because I don't do a lot of SSL certificate stripping. Really, that's not my field. It's more Wi-Fi, OSINT, and microcontrollers. I'm going to tell you if I don't know the answer to your question. So you can feel free to ask any question you want, but I may not know the answer, and I think that's okay. All right.
Oh, actually, going over this question, now that I actually see it pulled up here, regarding the SSL certificates. So one of the interesting things that I did try on my last video, which was DNS cache poisoning, since typically that relies on being able to like host a spoofed version of a website. So that'll connect over a regular like HTTP connection instead of HTTPS. So the thing that I tried to do was forge the SSL certificate just by like self-signing it and generating it with OpenSSL. The problem with that is most modern web browsers will flag that. They can see that it's a self-signed certificate and pretty much tell you that you're connecting to a sketchy website. So as far as I know, there's no good ways to replace that SSL certificate. Yeah, I don't really know how to spoof that.
What is your favorite payload on the Hack5 payload award?
I've only really gotten to try out one, which was the pseudo phishing payload. So for now, that's my favorite. I think that one was pretty novel. Yeah, if you guys haven't seen that video yet, first off, you should check it out. But also the way that one works is essentially the sudo command, which is just used for validating running stuff as the super user or administrator user on Linux. Basically, you can redirect that to a custom program that grabs your password while also running the original command by just creating a Linux alias. So an alias is just a thing that lets you create shortcuts for certain commands. Like if you're typing in like a whole string of things in your Linux terminal repetitively and you don't want to have to remember like that specific string of commands, you can just set a short alias that allows you to run those at any given time. But the thing is, since there isn't necessarily protection for overriding existing commands like sudo, you can just create an alias for the sudo command that points to a phishing script and steals the user's password, dumps it into a file, and yeah, you can do bad stuff from there. So I thought that was a pretty novel attack method. I covered that in a previous video, and you guys should check that out.
Is the OAuth cert worth it? Neither of us have it, so I couldn't really tell you. I'm sorry. Hey there, I've been following your stream for a while. I joined my local hackerspace, but they don't seem to be very active. Is there one perhaps on Discord that is more active for beginners? So I know that the Hack5 Discord is pretty active. It's not a hackerspace, but it is active. So I would check out the Hack5 Discord because I do see a good amount of activity on that.
Yeah, not really on Discord, but I am on the Hack5 Discord.
Are we still on for June 18th Cyber Weapons Lab? No, I'm so sorry. I'm still sick. My sinus is just not okay. So I'm not gonna do that this time. I'm so sorry. We'll try to do something else while we're here, but I can't face. I'm gonna sleep for 2 days after this because I'm still recovering from RSA and no, we're just not gonna do that. So all right, that's all the questions that we have time for today. Thank you for everybody joining us in the chat. And if you didn't get a chance to have your question answered, make sure to leave it on the video and we will reply to it next time. You can also check us out on Friday, hopefully, for our Friday news stream, and we will see you then. Thanks.